So there's a line from a Radiohead song that goes, "He used to do surgery for girls in the 80s, but gravity always wins." And all this week we've been talking about gravity in music itself, but there is another kind of gravity that we might encounter, and that is the pull of time, of aging, maybe how the industry or society sees us as musicians, whether we think that we're too old to be starting something new like learning an instrument or releasing our own music, or we feel like we're too young, we don't have enough experience yet. And so I'm going to share some of my own story, and then also a perspective on this idea of age and music, and maybe that it's not the music that cares how old we are. Strike spark. So welcome to Practice Space. If you're new, I'm Erica. I am a musician, composer, and music teacher. And here we explore creative, practical, but also some philosophical discussions about music. And so if that sounds fun, you can subscribe to the channel. And if you ever feel like you want to discuss anything deeper, I teach music online, so I'll leave a link to my teaching pages in the description. So I sometimes feel personally that there is no space in the industry for me. So I'll tell you how old I am. I turned 41 this year, and a lot of the older musicians we see already made it, we would say, in their 20s, so they had some success, and they're continuing to build on that success through their 30s and 40s and into their 50s. And of course, these are amazing role models, but there is such a lack of visibility of people who are perhaps earlier in their careers but older in years. And so this is just the way the music industry works. And it possibly depends on the kind of music you play. For some genres and some styles, there is less of this kind of ceiling where if you haven't made it by that age, then you shouldn't bother trying. But just in general, our society really has this fetishization of youth. Even for classical musicians, if you're not virtuoso by the age of 5, perhaps you haven't won a bunch of competitions before you can even have a conversation with someone, then your career is over. You may not even bother learning that instrument because you'll never be a worldwide soloist. And so part of this comes down to the fact that there are these narrow pathways that people feel like they have to follow. And of course, the music industry is very wide. And so for me, I was quite a late starter. I started my music degree when I was 28. And when I look back now, I think 28, that's so young. I was so young back then, but I felt old studying with 18 to 21-year-olds. And I actually think that I was in a better place for myself when I was 28 to do that music degree than I would have been when I was 18, straight out of high school. I didn't know what I wanted to do when I was straight out of high school. I was writing songs and playing the guitar, and I think of that music and it had this real kind of fresh passion of youth. It was very naive, but it was also super passionate and super enthusiastic. So if you are a younger musician and you have this passion and this enthusiasm, then you shouldn't feel like you have to wait until you have, wait until you've studied music, or wait until you're old enough, wait until you have some kind of recognition. You should just make music and let that youthful passion come out in what it is you're doing musically. And also, if you are an older musician like me, we shouldn't have to feel ashamed at the fact that we started later and that we're kind of, earlier in our music careers, but at an older age. And so it's only in the music industry that we feel this sense of pressure. In other art forms, if you were to do your first solo exhibition or write your first novel at age 60, people would applaud you and say, that's fantastic, well done. But to decide to start learning an instrument at age 60 and then, God forbid, want to actually release some of your own music, people think that's kind of weird, and they're like, why would you do that? That's, what the hell are you doing with your life? Why didn't you do this earlier? You've got no chance. And this is just such an ugly side of the music industry, and I hate it. I don't like it. I think that music is about art. And so that is something that being an older musician has given me, is this idea that I don't actually have to focus on image. My music is not about image. My music is about making art. And it's freed me a little bit from the idea that I have to push my music and, become some kind of worldwide superstar, because the music I make is kind of challenging sometimes, and I don't expect it to be a mainstream success. And so instead of focusing on whatever is the trend, following this small path that was set out when you were younger, this is the path to become a pop star, or this is a path to become a classical soloist, I am able to look at my own life and my own strengths and my own wisdom and all the things I've learned and say, this is my music, and I can present it kind of confidently. And I won't lie, it's not always easy. And it's not always easy, especially as a woman, to let go of the idea that your music career is tied up in your image. And there are absolutely parts of the industry where you can really age out of the industry. So I sometimes feel, if I'm singing jazz in kind of a commercial setting, so perhaps at weddings or at functions where there's this real focus on aesthetics over the music, there is definitely a sense for me as a female musician that I am out of place. I can play with all my male friends and it doesn't matter how old they are, but for the I guess the female front person of the band, there's this idea that if you are a jazz singer, it's like the young, glamorous person at the front of the stage. And it's really hard. It takes a lot of strength and personal self-belief to keep working and keep just feeling comfortable in these positions where you feel like society is telling you you shouldn't be there. And so I think the main thing to take from this video is this idea that it's not the music that cares how old you are. If you are a 70-year-old who's always wanted to learn to play the piano and now you're retired and you have the time, then you should learn to play the piano. The music doesn't care that you are 70 years old and you've never touched the piano before. The music just wants you to play the music. It's only society and it's only these kind of things that we tell ourselves that we're too old. And the same, if you're feeling too young, if you feel like you are too young to write your own music, you're not ready yet to do something, then I think you have to just go for it and let your youthful energy and enthusiasm be the driving force behind what you do. And if someone tells you that your music is too naive, you need to wait, you need to mature, you need to get better at, in 10 years' time, your voice will sound better. If you're an opera singer, you have to wait for your voice to mature. It doesn't mean that you can't sing. You can find ways of expressing yourself musically while you're waiting, I guess, for your voice to reach that level of maturity that the industry has decided is appropriate for the roles that you really want to sing. So the music does not care how old you are. The music just wants you to play it. And I think this should be your invitation to perhaps just let the music be played. And if you're feeling any sense of pressure for being either too young or too old, then let that go for today. And in your practice, just play the music and enjoy playing the music, because the music does not care how old you are. So these are my thoughts for today. If you like, you can stick around for a short relaxation exercise after this. And I hope I'll see you next time. Bye. So let's just take some time to prepare the body and the mind for practice. Take out your instrument, books, music, whatever you need for your practice today, and then spend a few moments making the space comfortable. And when you're ready, coming to a place of stillness, you can stand or sit with your instrument, and then with the next exhale, gently closing the eyes. Bring your awareness to your breath. Notice where in the body you feel that breath moving: the nose, the throat, chest, diaphragm. Where you feel the rise of each inhale and the fall of each exhale. And now you can begin to count each breath. 1 with the inhale, 2 with the exhale, 3 inhale, 4 exhale. Just up to a count of 10, then returning back to 1 again. And if any thoughts appear in the mind, simply noting, thinking, or any feelings, noting, feeling, and bringing the attention back to the breath. If you find you're distracted, simply returning to the count of 1, back to 10, and then repeat back at 1. So now slowly bringing your awareness back to the body, feeling the weight of your body in the chair, or the feeling of the feet connected to the floor. Maybe the feeling of your instrument under your fingers, its texture. And then, when you're ready, you can blink the eyes open, and I wish you a wonderful day's practice.